He didn't yell. He didn't look angry. He just said it like he was talking about a stranger. "You can take the guest room for a few weeks, Mom. We already signed the papers." It was a Tuesday afternoon. I remember because the light was hitting the kitchen floor just right, that soft kind of golden glow that made the old wood planks look like honey. The same floor I used to mop barefoot humming while my boys played with spoons and flour on the tiles. Now I was standing in the doorway, holding a casserole dish wrapped in foil, and hearing my own son tell me I couldn't stay. Not in the house I raised him in, not in the home I built with my late husband, not in the place where my name was carved into the front step literally with a pocket knife in 1983. "It's not personal, Mom," he said. "It's just what makes sense now." That's when I knew this wasn't about logic. It was about erasing me gently, politely, like sweeping dust from a bookshelf. Not loud, not cruel, just gone. Have you ever been made to feel like a guest in the life you gave your whole self to build? If this story sounds like yours, or your mother's, or the one you've been too afraid to admit, stay right here. Like this video, leave a comment below if you've ever been quietly pushed aside, and subscribe to Whispers of a Mother, where voices like mine don't fade, they echo. My name is Eleanor Morgan. I'm 74 years old, widowed for 6 years this coming December. I was born in Jackson, Mississippi, but I've lived in Cedarville, Ohio for most of my adult life. That little white house on Birch Street, that's where I moved into with Walter after our wedding in 1971. He built the fence by hand. I planted every rose bush. Every room had a story, even the broken closet door in the upstairs hallway. Walter never fixed it, said it gave the house character. We raised 2 boys there, Daniel and Thomas. Thomas lives in Oregon now. He calls once a month, sometimes every other. He's quiet. Always has been. Daniel, though, Daniel was the lively one. Always making jokes, always helping me around the house when Walter's back got bad. He used to bring me tea before school. He used to kiss my cheek and say, "Love you, Mom," without needing a reason. People used to say he looked just like me. Same smile, same eyebrows, same quick temper if pushed too far. I never imagined I'd be afraid to speak in front of my own son. Daniel married Megan 12 years ago. She's smart, organized, efficient, the kind of woman who makes a spreadsheet for Thanksgiving dinner and has the guest towels labeled by scent. I truly tried to be a good mother-in-law. I stayed out of their business. I never offered parenting advice. I babysat when asked, baked when invited, and kept my opinions to myself. But something changed when Walter died. It was subtle at first, little things. I'd suggest repainting a cabinet, and she'd say, "Let's not confuse Daniel." I'd bring over my famous peach cobbler, and she'd set it in the garage fridge for later. Daniel stopped coming inside my house when she was with him, stopped hugging me in front of her. But I told myself it was grief, stress, adulthood. I didn't want to be dramatic. Didn't want to be that kind of mother. So I smiled. And now 6 years later, I'm standing on my own porch being told to pack one bag. Because the house I once walked through blindfolded has a new deed, and my name isn't on it. Daniel wasn't always like this. If you had told me 20 years ago that he would one day ask me to leave my home, I would have laughed truly. Because he used to be my heartbeat. He was the kind of boy who always knew when I was tired, would bring me a blanket without being asked. The kind of son who never forgot a Mother's Day. He made me a paper rose when he was 7 and taped it to my kitchen cabinet with a crooked note for the queen of breakfast and hugs. I left it there for 14 years. After Walter passed, it was Daniel who helped me fix the roof, clear out the attic, and sort through his father's things. We cried together, sitting on the garage floor, holding Walter's old flannel. Daniel said, "Mom, you're the strongest woman I know." He told me he'd never let anything happen to me. That as long as he was around, I'd always have a place, not just a house, but a place. When Megan had their first child, little Jamie, I was the one they called at 2:00 a.m. when the baby wouldn't stop crying. I drove over in slippers and held that child for 2 hours so Megan could sleep. Daniel hugged me tight at the door that night. "I don't know what we'd do without you," he said. I remember how proud he was when I babysat Jamie through his first flu. How he'd ask for my chicken soup recipe every winter, even though he never made it the same. We used to have Sunday dinners, the 5 of us. Megan didn't talk much, but Daniel would tell stories, pour me a glass of wine, and kiss the top of my head before I left. There was love. There was comfort. There was trust. Somewhere between then and now, the warmth faded. But back then I was needed. I was home. It didn't happen all at once. It started with little things. A phone call not returned. A holiday invitation that arrived late, or not at all. Dinners that turned into grab something on the way texts. A shift so subtle I thought maybe I was imagining it. After all, Daniel was busy. Megan had work. The kids had schedules. But it kept happening. One Sunday, I showed up with a lemon cake. Jamie opened the door, looked confused, then shouted, "Dad, Grandma's here." I think Megan came to the door, half blocking it with her body. "Oh, hi. We weren't expecting you." I smiled through the sting. "It's Sunday. I thought—" "Right," she said, glancing behind her. "We're just about to head out for Jamie's soccer game. Maybe next weekend." Daniel didn't come to the door. I stood there with the cake in both hands like a fool. I took it home. It stayed untouched. Another time, I called Daniel after seeing a notice in the local paper about a business award he'd won. He picked up, voice rushed. "Hey, Mom, can I call you back?" He didn't. 3 days later, I got a text. "Sorry, been swamped. Everything okay?" I didn't reply. I didn't want to sound petty. I didn't want to be the mother who kept score. But then things escalated. They said my house was too big for me, too old, too many stairs. Megan offered to help manage the bills. She started paying them from an account I didn't have access to. Daniel said, "We just want to make life easier for you." But easier started to feel a lot like invisible. They began bringing up assisted living casually. Left pamphlets in my mail slot. Mentioned places with wonderful social calendars and safe, secure units. I asked Megan point blank if they were planning something. She smiled. "Don't be dramatic, Eleanor. We're just exploring options." She called me Eleanor. Not Mom, not even Mrs. Morgan, just Eleanor. Like a client, like a line item on a checklist. That night, I walked into my bedroom, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at the quiet. And in that silence, something began to shift. I didn't have the words for it yet, but I could feel it in my bones the same way you feel a storm coming before the rain ever hits. They weren't planning to help me. They were planning to replace me. The day they made it official wasn't loud. It didn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It came with papers, and a pen, and 3 polite smiles. Daniel picked me up that morning and said he was taking me to brunch. "We'll stop by the bank," after he added casually. "Just to update a few things." I should have known, but I wanted to believe. I needed to. He held the car door open for me, played soft music on the drive, even complimented my sweater. "You look nice today, Mom," he said. It almost felt like old times. The woman at the bank was young, with a bright smile, and nails painted pale pink. She spoke in that careful tone people use when they're used to older clients. "Good morning, Mrs. Morgan. We're just going to have you sign a few forms to simplify your accounts." Daniel leaned in. "It's just for your safety, Mom. Less hassle." She slid the papers across the desk. Power of attorney, property consolidation, beneficiary restructuring. My name was still on everything, but only barely. I paused. "Can I take these home and look over them?" Daniel's smile faltered. "We already have an appointment booked. It'll take 5 minutes." I looked at him, my son, and I saw someone I didn't recognize. Not because he was angry, but because he was comfortable. Comfortable with making decisions without me. comfortable with assuming I didn't understand what was happening, comfortable with treating me like a checkbox. I signed. I don't know why. Maybe it was the room, the way they both stared at me, the weight of trying to argue when you're tired of being difficult. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, not mine, Megan's, and stared at my reflection in the black of the microwave door. I looked so small, so tidy, like someone who used to matter. The next morning, Megan made me tea. Chamomile, lukewarm. She placed it on the counter and said, "We've been talking, and it might be time to think about a smaller space." My hands stiffened around the mug. "We can help with the process. There are beautiful assisted living communities just 15 minutes from here, with on-site care, events, meals. It's not a bad thing." I said nothing. She continued, "Daniel has already looked into a few. You'd still see the kids. Of course, you could visit any time." Visit. The word rang in my ears. I wasn't just being moved, I was being relocated emotionally. From mother to visitor. I asked her if I could go back to my house for a few days. See the roses, touch the walls? She looked up, almost surprised. "Oh, we sold it." My chest went cold. "What?" She cleared her throat. "We listed it last month. Quietly. It was easier that way." "Daniel didn't want to upset you." I didn't speak. I couldn't. Not until the room began to blur and my knees gave way. I sat down, clutching the edge of the counter, trying to breathe through the thudding in my ears. All I could think was, where did I go? When did I disappear from my own life? That night, I cried for the first time in years. Not from anger, not from betrayal, from something deeper, the death of identity. The next few weeks felt like floating in someone else's life. I had a room, white walls, beige carpet, a small dresser. The door didn't have a lock, Megan said. "Just so we can get to you quickly, in case you fall." I stopped asking about my house, stopped asking about my bank account, stopped asking Daniel if we could talk, just the two of us. Because every time I did, he'd say, "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be, Mom." Harder for who they gave me schedules. Breakfast at 8, medication at 9, TV time between 2 and 4, only shows Megan approved. She disconnected the cable and replaced it with a streaming plan. "Less confusing," she said. When I left dishes in the sink, she reminded me gently, "We like to keep things tidy." Eleanor again. I wasn't Mom anymore. I was a resident. They changed the locks. They rehomed my cat without asking. They sold my old china cabinet, the one my mother gave me on my wedding day, because it didn't fit the aesthetic. Every day, something else vanished. My books, my slippers, my chair, and Daniel. He smiled less, hugged less. He'd drop a kiss on my hair and walk away like he was checking a task off his list. I tried once, just once, to say how I felt. We were sitting in the backyard. The kids were playing. Megan was inside. I reached out and touched Daniel's hand. "Do you really think I can't take care of myself?" He didn't look at me, just stared out at the lawn and said, "It's not about that, Mom. It's about what's easiest for everyone. Everyone. Everyone but me." It started with a library card. Megan had forgotten to cancel my old address, so my renewal notice came in the mail. It was the first envelope in weeks with my full name, Eleanor L. Morgan, printed in bold. I held it like a treasure. That afternoon, while Megan and the kids were at soccer practice and Daniel was working late, I asked their teenage daughter Emma for a ride. "Just to the library," I said, "and maybe a stop at the pharmacy." She agreed, no questions asked. At the library, I didn't check out books. I logged into a computer and opened my old email account. It had been months since I last used it. The inbox was flooded, but I found the one thread I needed: my lawyer, David Hellman. He'd helped Walter and me write our original will. A kind man, direct, trusted. I emailed him. "David, I need to review the documents you helped us file in 2015. Quietly, please? He replied within the hour. The next week, I told Daniel I had a doctor's appointment. He didn't ask what kind. Megan didn't offer to come. I met David at a small diner off Highway 22. I wore a beige coat and kept my scarf wrapped tight like I was hiding something, and in a way, I was. I brought the documents they had me sign at the bank. He looked them over line by line. After 20 minutes, he leaned back and said, "Eleanor, you didn't transfer power of attorney. You surrendered it." I felt the weight of every signature crash over me. But then he said, "It's not irreversible." And that one word, reversible, lit something inside me that had almost gone cold. We made a plan. David filed for a review of my legal status. Quietly, carefully. He had a neurologist lined up to certify I was mentally sound. He helped me open a new account, a private one. Over the next few weeks, I began collecting things: statements, voicemails, copies of my prescriptions, notes from the caregivers at the local wellness center who'd seen me spoken to me said I was fine. Even Emma helped. She showed me how to upload files to the cloud, how to lock them behind passwords. She didn't ask many questions. But one afternoon, as she handed me her phone, she whispered, "I don't think what they're doing is okay." And that was all I needed. Because someone still saw me. Not as a patient, not as a problem, but as a person. It happened on a Thursday. The morning started like any other. Megan reminding the kids to grab their lunches. Daniel glued to his phone, half listening to a work call as he tied his shoes. But by noon, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I was folding laundry when I heard the front door open fast. Daniel walked in, his face pale, his breath ragged. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in months. "Mom, can we talk?" I followed him into the kitchen. He sat down slowly, like someone carrying a weight he hadn't expected. Then he said something I never thought I'd hear from his mouth. "We're in trouble." The consulting firm he worked for had been audited. An internal review exposed conflicts of interest, all tied to a client Megan had pushed him to prioritize. His accounts were frozen. He was placed on administrative leave. He could be disbarred. I didn't speak, just listened. His hands trembled. They're looking into all our finances. The house. The business Megan tried to start last year. The trusts. Your accounts. He stopped, swallowed hard. "We can't prove that everything was done with your permission." I looked at him, heart steady. "That's because it wasn't." His shoulders sank. "David Hellman sent me a notice," he said. "You're contesting the paperwork." I nodded once. He closed his eyes. "Mom, I don't know what to do." I wanted to say, "You should have thought of that before you sold my house." I wanted to say, "This is what happens when you trade trust for control." But I didn't, because in that moment I didn't see a man who'd taken everything. I saw a boy. My boy. Scared, ashamed, drowning. So I got up. I pulled out a folder from my bag. Bank statements, copies, legal forms, backup passwords. Every document David and I had prepared. "You're going to give this to your lawyer," I said. "You're going to tell the truth. And you're going to fix what you cannot for me. For your children." He stared at the folder, then at me. "You kept all this?" I nodded. "I told you, Daniel. I may be old, but I'm not gone." He reached across the table, his hand trembling. He touched mine like he wasn't sure he was allowed to anymore. "Thank you," he whispered. I didn't say, "You're welcome." I didn't say anything, because this was not forgiveness. This was responsibility. Daniel didn't fix everything overnight. The investigation took months. Megan's name was removed from several accounts. They sold their second car. Moved into a smaller home on the other side of town. He kept his license, but his reputation was bruised deeply. He started calling me again. Not to manage me. Not to check on me. Just to talk. He'd ask how my garden was doing, if I'd baked anything lately, if I needed a ride to church or the pharmacy. I never said yes. Not because I was bitter, but because I needed him to understand that rebuilding trust wasn't something you could schedule like a dentist appointment. Then one morning he showed up with Jamie, my grandson, holding a tray of scones he said they baked together. I opened the door slowly. Daniel didn't try to hug me. He didn't step inside until I nodded. We sat in the living room, the same one he used to roller skate in, the one where his father's old recliner still sat untouched. Jamie played on the rug. Daniel just looked around the room like he hadn't seen it in years. "You kept everything the same," he said. I smiled faintly. "Not everything. I changed the locks." He laughed. Not a loud laugh, a soft, tired one, but real. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a folded piece of paper. "It's the old deed," he said. "Your name. Reinstated? I had it re-recorded last week. I didn't reach for it." "Why now?" I asked. He looked at me for a long time before answering. "Because I finally realized the house was never the problem. I was." We sat in silence for a while after that. The kind of silence that isn't empty, it's full. Full of things too deep for words, too old to explain. Eventually, Jamie came over and crawled into my lap, just like his father used to. And Daniel said, "I hope someday he sees me the way I used to see you." I didn't promise him anything. I didn't offer easy absolution. But I reached over and rested my hand on the same hand I once guided across a kindergarten worksheet. It trembled a little. Mine didn't. Some endings are quiet. They don't come with music swelling in the background, or grand speeches, or everyone suddenly realizing they were wrong. They come with a knock on the door, a shared scone, a deed returned in a plain envelope. I never moved back in with Daniel, even after the apology, even after the paperwork was fixed, even after Jamie begged me to please live closer. I chose to stay where I was, in the little house I now rent not far from where I once called home. It's smaller, older. The windows stick when it rains, but it's mine. The name on the mailbox is mine. The keys in my purse are mine. The silence, the peace is mine. Every Sunday, Daniel and Jamie visit. Sometimes they bring flowers, sometimes just stories. Sometimes they stay for hours, sometimes only 20 minutes. But when they leave, they always hug me, both of them, like they mean it. Megan doesn't come, and that's okay. Some relationships don't mend. Some cracks stay cracks no matter how many times you paint over them. But I've stopped trying to fix what isn't asking to be healed. I've started writing again. Nothing big, just small pieces. Letters to myself. Memories of Walter. Notes to Jamie about how to plant tomatoes and when to prune roses. I keep them in a box marked, "In case you forget who I am." Because that's the lesson, isn't it? If you don't write your story, someone else will. And they might call it love. They might even believe it's kindness. But they'll erase the parts that matter, the hard-won, deeply felt, fiercely lived parts, and replace them with something quieter, easier, smaller. I won't let that happen again. This life, this story mine, is not perfect, but it's honest, and it's not over. Jamie asked me last week if I'd ever thought about moving in with him when he's older. "I'd build you a room right next to mine," he said, "with a red mailbox and everything." I smiled. "Maybe," I said, "but you better let me keep my name on the lease." He laughed, not quite understanding. "But one day he will. Maybe you're watching this from a guest room you didn't choose. Maybe you've been called dramatic when you tried to speak up. Maybe you've signed something you didn't want to, just to keep the peace. This story isn't just mine. It's yours too. Tell me, what would you write in your own In Case You Forget Who I Am box? Subscribe to Whispers of a Mother, because no one else should be allowed to finish your story for you.